Hello, everyone, and welcome to my show, Seeking the Seeker. In here, we talk about everything starting from career to personal life to mythology, fitness, nutrition, and everything else that the human mind can possibly contemplate. In today's episode, I'll be speaking with Arunima Suresh, who's been a seasoned HR for the past 9 years now in major companies like Uber, Gojek, and many others. She has in depth experience in the field of hiring and recruitment. And so, if you're someone who's been looking for a job, maybe the first job, or probably seeking a job change and have been getting these rejection emails constantly, despite having it all together, this episode is for you. Hello, Arunima, and welcome to the show. Firstly, how have you been?
I've been good. How have you been?
I've been okay, just juggling life and kid and office and everything.
I can imagine.
But how's married life?
Married life is, I wouldn't sugarcoat it. It's tough, but it has its bittersweet moments. I love it. I'm having a ball, but there's also, responsibilities and running the house and all of that comes along with it. So, yeah.
So the next stage is when you have a kid, and I'm already in that stage. So I think I'm way past talking about how married life is. I'm right now into that stage. How do I handle my work and my kid together?
I can
Um,
imagine.
but it's great to connect with you. I've been waiting for this for a long time now. But before we get started with all the technical discussions, I wanted our listeners to know why I wanted you to be the first guest on my show. Uh, Firstly, I think I've known you since the age of 13 or 14, since grade 7 we were in. So
Yeah.
you've been a good friend, and but at the same time, I have known you to be extremely professional because you've been the house captain and all of that. And post that, uh, when I was in dire need of some advice for one of my interviews, everything that you said resonated very well with the whole process, and it worked in my favor. And I really got through those interviews. Keeping that in mind, in our country, in India, we have about 25 lakh people approximately graduating every year, and a huge proportion of those would be part of the private sector, and they would get into the IT companies that we work for. Um, People like us who are going to get into the private sector, while the only thing that's right in front of us is that, that vacancy that comes on these online portals, we apply and then we get these bunch of rejection emails. We moved on with other applicants, the right fit. We do that for 3, 4 months, and suddenly one fine day, one of those vacancies just click.
Yeah.
We get an offer to apply to get to the interview, and there we are. But what happens behind the curtains, we have no idea. All right. And that's why you're here. I want us to sort of tell the audience what goes on in the recruiting process and how it all looks behind the curtains. But before that, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Of course. So I think you've reached the right person because I do, feel like I'm well versed in this field. I've done it for about close to 9 years now. I've been in the recruiting field. That's literally ever since I left college. I started off, at least going back to my education, I did journalism and mass media in Manipal University. To be very honest, it was just a safe course to take because I didn't know where I wanted to head in terms of my career. What really changed the trajectory amongst, after my college is that during my college, I worked for this organization called ISEC, which is basically like an international exchange organization. I'm sure a couple of people are aware about it, and where we send people on exchange. And over there, I was handling the talent management department, which was something that was entirely new to me. I had never learned it before, but I enjoyed it. And I thought that, okay, cool. I think I found something that I like. And then I, finished my college, 3 years, came back to Hyderabad. I started applying for opportunities. Uber was one such company that came across my way then. And when I applied, I then saw that, there were a couple of opportunities that were out there. One was a customer service, and then there were other opportunities in the recruitment field. But long story short, I made it into the talent acquisition team because somebody saw that in my resume, I had like talent management experience. So they were looking for someone really junior to join the team. But I feel like that's something, sometimes you say that you're just put in the right place at the right time. And that was one for me. I am absolutely grateful for the experience. And I think everything I know about recruiting is basically because of my experience at Uber. I joined them in 2016. Very early on, I started off as something called an inbound candidate sourcer. This is essentially someone that when you spoke about the people that apply to multiple job roles, this is the person who sits behind the screen and looks at the applications that's come through and screens them. So are they a fit? Are they not? Should I advance them? Should I reject them? So that was essentially my jokes. So you can imagine that I got like 10,000 applications that I was looking at in a day, where I was just click, 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 rejecting them or advancing them based on if they're fitting the role or not. So that's essentially the job of an inbound candidate sourcer. Post which I did that for a bit, and then I moved on to the role of a recruiting coordinator at Uber. So essentially, what I was doing here is coordinating interviews. So you can say that setting them up on calendar every time an interview is booked, making sure that, they have the mode, the medium to speak. If they're coming in on site, taking them to the meeting room. So very scheduling and making sure that you're in touch with the recruiter and the hiring manager. So I was sort of the middleman in between the recruiter and the hiring manager. Post which, I think after I finished the role as an RC, we call it an RC, which is a recruiting coordinator. But I had a small stint as a university coordinator, which is basically like a campus recruitment where you have going into universities and hiring directly from campuses and the ones that actually go and make the placements and stuff like that. So that was a little bit of what I did, after which I finally moved on to a technical recruiter. Now, this is the role that I did for the longest time and did in my next company that I moved to as well, but essentially ended up setting up processes and hiring the first few people on the engineering team in Uber Hyderabad. We set up the first technical program management team at Uber. A lot of the first engineers, the back-end engineers, the engineering managers were hired by us back then. Great learning experience. I think I probably wouldn't have learned as much as I did there. And I was there for about a good 4 years, after which I felt like I'd learned everything that I could. After that, I thought it was time to move on. I also was there for the IPO. We went IPO, which was a great feeling. And post which I moved on to Gojek. Now, Uber, by the time I left, had become a very well-established company. Processes were set in place. It was very different from the time that I joined 4 years back, where it was really scrappy. And I moved on to Gojek after Uber. Gojek is basically a Southeast Asia app. It's called a super app, which is basically like, imagine a Swiggy plus Uber plus Urban Clap all put together. So we're prevalent in Indonesia, in Singapore. These are places where there's actually, Uber is not prevalent. Like, people use this as the primary mode of everything. Your food delivery, your ride sharing, everything is pretty much used on Gojek. And very, very different experience there, because when I was at Uber, I was hiring essentially in India as a segment. So like Hyderabad, Bangalore, Delhi. Versus when I was hiring for Gojek, because we had a presence in Singapore and Indonesia, my hiring kind of moved to the Southeast Asian region. Hiring works very differently in different countries is something that I realized then. You have sponsorship that you need when you're applying for roles in Singapore. You find a lot of different nuances when you hire in Indonesia. So that kind of just helped me explore a little bit more about global hiring, hiring outside India, which was different. So that was my experience with Gojek. I did technical recruiting there as well, hired a lot of data scientists, product managers. After 2 years there, I then moved on to a very interesting opportunity that came my way. And this is again tied down to where I said that after hiring for India, after hiring for Singapore, after hiring for Indonesia, and after spreading my wings a little, wide in terms of global recruiting, I realized that the market on the other side, which is essentially US, is something that I had not explored yet. That would just give me a wholesome experience as a recruiter to know, just how recruiting works worldwide. So I've been in the US recruiting space for about a good, I must say, 3 to 4 years now. And this was again very different, because we were hiring for companies that were just being funded, companies that do not have their own recruiting teams. So you kind of just doing it all together. Very exciting. I must say that, it's like you're taking a big risk, because it's not like you're working for a big company. They work very differently. They want very different things. They're looking for like that one purple unicorn that you have to find. So very challenging. And, just working across geographies also lets you understand so much more about the landscape and how things work, and compensation and everything differs. So yeah, that's been my experience. I've been doing this for about 9 years now, thoroughly enjoying it, which is why I'm still here.
So basically through and through recruiting,
Yes.
all across these 9 years.
Yes.
Right. With a bit of other tasks, but mainly recruiting. While you were sharing, you spoke about this one part when the person's just sitting at the screen, and you did that for quite a while, is just shortlisting the people, which is the right profile, the wrong profile. About that, the whole process of shortlisting candidates, when you say something's right, something's not, do you have a number in mind that these are the number of applicants I'm going to shortlist as yes, suitable for the role? And no, or you just see suitable for the first screening part, you just segregate it as suitable and not suitable?
Yeah, I mean, no, there is no particular number that we put out there. See, essentially, sometimes a role might need 1% for that role, or you might have a head count of 5. Of course, I have that at the back of my head. So if I do have to hire 5 people for that particular role, I am bound to say yes to a couple of more people, than if I have to just hire one person. But there is no particular number that we look at. At the end of the day, it's just that I'm looking at a profile. Does that fit the role that I'm looking for? Yes or no? That's about it. It could be 100 that fit the role. We might do another screening later, but it could be just 2 that might fit the role. But we don't put a number to it. If you actually tick almost all of the boxes that we're looking for from a job description standpoint, what the hiring manager is looking to hire, we're okay with putting you through, because there's so many more layers that go after that. This is just the initial layer of filtration. There is going to be an exercise. There's going to be a bunch of interviews, like 4 to 5 rounds. So much more that goes after that. So this is just an initial step when I look at your resume and I see, are you able to fit what the job description is saying? Like, if that's a yes, you go ahead. If that's no, you outright reject it.
Okay, I don't want to compare it, but it sounds a lot like Tinder, basically swipe right, swipe left.
Yeah, pretty much.
Maybe Tinder took the idea from this basic process of shortlisting.
Yeah.
So when you do that, you have in mind the prerequisites or the eligibility criteria for that particular role.
Correct. Yes.
And when you say yes to something and no to another application, is it set in stone? By that I mean, say, I'll just give an example here. Let's say one of the resumes is very appropriate, apt for the role you're hiring for, but the eligibility criteria is you need 10 years of work experience. And then this guy ends up having like 9 years.
Okay.
Would you still say yes to that or no?
See, prerequisites are there for a reason, right? At the end of the day, we've put something together. The hiring manager says that, okay, this is what I'm looking for. It's because technically that's what it takes for you to flourish in the role. So if there is someone that we're looking for that is coming in with 9+ years of experience, but the role requires 10, I will favor someone that has 10+ years of experience. As a recruiter, I must say yes. But does that mean that if someone is exceptionally great, for example, he's coming from a tier 1 college, if I'm hiring for an engineering role, a computer science degree, he's coming in from a great company, great startup, such relevant experience, I'm okay with giving that a shot and saying, okay, he might not have 9, he might have 1 year of less in terms of experience that we're looking at for the role, but I'm okay with giving this a push because I just feel like he's a strong candidate and he can make the cut. There are some people who don't meet the years of experience criteria, but they've upskilled themselves. They've done courses on the side. They've just worked really hard in those few years. So it's possible for sure. But largely, I would say that the years of experience is a criteria and prerequisites are kind of set in stone, which is why you will see that if I'm applying for a role that needs 10 years of experience and I just have 8, I am bound to get rejected. But you need to be exceptional in a lot of other fields for that to not stand out.
But that comes down to the point where you're actually reviewing the whole resume in utter detail. What about the very first screening when you have like 1,000 applications to go through and you have very limited time to say yes or no?
So essentially, when and I'll tell you from personal experience, when I would initially do this role that I spoke about, when I would keep looking at profiles, I take a lot of time and just stare at them up, down to up. But then I realized, and a lot of my then superiors told me that, Arunima, you don't need to spend so much time looking at a resume. Spend like a couple of seconds. That's all you need.
The seconds,
you have
okay.
So many things, so many profiles to look at. How are you going to give 1 minute each to a resume or 30 seconds each? I was spending less than 30 seconds to look at a profile, primarily because there are only 2 things that stood out: your college and your company. If you're coming in from, and in the terminology of recruiting, we call it pedigree, which is basically, now I'm speaking about the company where I worked on this role was Uber. We would only hire from tier 1, tier 2 colleges, which meant an IIT Delhi, IIT Bombay, IIT Madras, an NIT Warangal, Triple IT Hyderabad. It could be the list of tier 1. It could be tier 2, tier 3 colleges as well. But I would see that, okay, are they coming from there? They need not be. But are they coming from a great startup, a great company? Back then, even like working at say a Zomato, if someone's working right now at a Zepto, these are really fast-growing startups, and I know that they're probably doing something great there and we need them right now. They might not be from a great college, but if there is a college or the company that's standing out, and that's the 2 things I look at. So I'm just looking at, okay, what company are they at? What college are they at? Is anything standing out? Can I push them forward? So those are the 2 things that I look at. And this is why when people ask me, what do I put in my resume, or they send me resumes to review, I tell them that as a recruiter, I'm not going to look at the 20 bullet points that you're writing. I might later, but not at the first glance. So only put in the information that you absolutely need them to know. And your LinkedIn can probably be a space where you talk about it more largely.
Right.
All you need to put is the important information down there. Your college, your course that you did, the companies that you worked on, what kind of projects or what kind of teams did you work with? If I'm hiring for a software engineer in the fintech team, if someone's coming in from a Stripe or a Revolut or a fintech company or a Paytm, I would give them preference because I know that they've done this in the past. They're going to do well.
Right.
you knowing what needs to be on your resume. It's always good to make it a one-pager. It doesn't matter if you have pages and pages, a recruiter is not going to read through it. I think this is something that I really want people to listen to.
So you just want to get through the door. Instead of focusing on those 20 bullet points and telling about what all I achieved in my so-and-so roles, it's important you first meet the criteria of your school, I mean, your college and the company that you're currently working for.
Yeah. And that is why, right, Anubhav? That is why do you think people push for, the bigger colleges? Or I'm not even talking about the bigger colleges. You don't have to be from an IIT or an IIM, but even a private college, but that's doing really well. It could be anything smaller as well. I'm talking about like an SRM or a VIT or I'm not talking just about the big one, like a Symbiosis. These are still okay. But if you're from a completely no-name college, that really doesn't hold a lot of value. Even if you're from there are very exceptional cases. And I must say, I've seen cases where they're from a no-name college that I've not heard of before, but they've made it to like a Microsoft or an Amazon or a great startup.
Yeah.
They've probably done something right. But I'm just saying that either of these can stand out. And that is why I think all of our parents push us to get into like the better colleges, the better degrees, get a
just
better
that jump start, basically.
Yeah, it's important. Your college, your company, they hold you at a very high regard.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many components here. I have like questions bubbling out of my mind right now. But one is, okay, you said the colleges, and then comes the years of work experience. And these are a couple of these key points you're looking for. You're not reading through the entire resume. So it's very important that the person applying, they look at the job description in detail and then make their resume just according to it. And if obviously not lie on the resume, but you need to stand out in terms of those perfect eligibility criteria that you need in order to be selected for the first screening. And only when you meet all that criteria, then comes your work experience and what you've achieved in your previous work company and all of that.
I think the point that you said before, this makes so much sense. Making sure that when you're applying to a role, you read the job description and you know that you're fitting the role. Like I have seen marketing coordinators apply for a software engineering position. You're highly going to get rejected for that. Like most likely going to reject it for that, right?
A couple of examples I wanted to throw right in front of you and see if my understanding is right. You talked about the colleges having the right degrees to fit a certain role, like somebody in marketing trying to apply for a software development role, like you said. But there are so many out there who are attending boot camps, who are attending these short courses. They're really learning the skill. It's not that they're not. And then applying for these roles. Do they hold any chance of getting or switching their careers from, say, a non-tech to a tech? Because they've attended a 6 months boot camp or they've done a 6 months course. Even let's include prestigious universities as well, who offer these certificate courses for 6-7 months or a year maybe.
Right.
Does that make a difference?
Yeah, why not? I mean, what you're referring to again is kind of comes under upskilling as well, right? Someone who found something that they're interested in later that they really want to work on and get better. Of course, like it's going to hold value for sure. We are going to look at it. But I think one thing that I must say that if they're coming in with 4 years of experience in marketing, they're going to a boot camp doing like a back-end engineering course where they learn Python or Java and C, and then they come and apply for a software engineering role. They're really good. They've probably gotten like a great, remarks in terms of marks or the kind of position that they're holding and stuff like that. But what they will have to be okay with is the fact that they're moving from a non-tech to a tech role, which means that they will have to start from scratch here. They will not be getting the same...
That's agreeable. I think everybody understands that. Even when you're doing that from a tech role to a non-tech, I think it's understandable. So many people have seen switching from software development to sales. Obviously, they have to start with the beginners then.
Yeah.
They cannot think that their years of experience will count.
But that's a little challenging because, compensation ranges will go back down to low, but they're already making something. And they'll be like, hey, I'm already making this. But then it's difficult for them to understand that, for me to make this, it's a little bit of a pinch of salt, but if you really want to make that shift, you have to be okay with letting go of a couple of things. So that could be a barrier, but if someone's actually working on certifications, boot camps, and, in the US, again, I don't see this holding a lot of value. Like, we actually do not really appreciate people that are from boot camps. They need to be from like a B.Tech or an M.Tech from a good thing. But in India...
Because there's so many from boot camps.
Yeah, there are a lot from boot camps. And that we've heard companies often say, we don't want people from boot camps. So I'm being very upfront that that's how it works there. But in India, I've seen people who actually hold such degrees at, they give it attention. Like, why not? Like, they're open to chat with people for sure.
Okay. And since you said that you look at all those thousands of applications, I had the idea that it is a software that sort of does the first basic screening, and then it goes to the HR as the bunch of shortlisted one. Like You have 1,000 applications to bring that down to 50, and then the HR goes through it. That's what I heard out there. Do you use, I mean, do HRs use a software like that, or is it they personally go through all those thousands, like you said?
Okay, so I'm talking about me doing this 9 years back. Things were different. AI was not in the picture.
Okay. Okay.
AI has definitely taken things over. We have a lot more things that are being looked in terms of keywords. For example, if the job description has certain keywords, the resume is basically scanned based on AI tools that are inbuilt into these ATSs, which is basically applicant tracking systems. So that happens right now, yes. But I mean, back in the day, 9 years back, I used to do this manually. I used to get 1,000, 10,000 applications that I'm just clicking and selecting. And that's why I said that I spend such less time looking at them. But now we do have tools that can, like you said, look at, basically they do keyword matching. If it's there in the job description, if it's there in the profile, they send it ahead to the next step. But yeah. But it depends from tool to tool. For example, there are a lot of ATSs out there in the market as well. So applicant tracking systems are basically where your resume, once it's uploaded, goes into the system, all of the movement of stages, your feedback, everything is put in that one system. So that is what we as recruiters use to track, process and feedback and move them through stages and roll out the offer. All of that happens on that one tool. So we have different things like we used iSIMS back at Uber, there's Lever that we use, there's Greenhouse. So these are a couple of applicant tracking systems that we use. But depending on the capability and how well it works, there are people that filter it out. But then back in the day, we used to do it very manually. But there are more tools now, given AI is coming into the picture.
Right. So back then, as a person, while you're reviewing those resumes, somebody might still have a chance of getting past you because something of theirs caught your eye. But now that there is AI, none of those exceptions would make any difference to the to the whole pipeline of applications, because it has to be just exactly what the eligibility criteria states. Otherwise, you will be rejected by the software.
Yeah.
So
possible. It's also possible
yeah.
where I don't know if you've ever applied for a role on LinkedIn. It gives you a couple of prerequisite questions that it asks you to fill out. It says that, do you have experience working with this? Say yes or no. Are you open to relocate to this place? Yes or no. Are you okay with it? So if you say yes or no based on that, I'm sure there is a, something at the end that happens.
Based on that, they give you the percentage of match.
Yeah.
So, and then you can apply to those that you perfectly 100% match.
Yeah.
Those.
Yeah. So that happens now. It's all new. It was not like this, but there's so much more to talk about, like passive applications, candidates that are not interested. Because when a person applies to a role, out of these 100 people that I might probably screen, Anubhav, maybe one might fit the bill. Maybe one I might even take ahead. Like I said, people don't look at job descriptions when they apply. So there's a lot of junk that comes in. I'm not going to lie about it. A lot of irrelevant application. Someone who's just graduated that's applying for a role that is a manager, that has a manager title. So we see this.
Just trying his luck out. What if?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, but it's a waste of time on our end. But then yeah, they get rejected and they're disheartened. But we couldn't do anything about it. You've not read the job description. So yeah, that's on the inbound. I think probably later in the discussion, we'll get into outbound as well, where I'll talk about that, which is a whole different ballgame altogether. But yeah.
So while you have a particular vacancy out there on these job portals and people are constantly sending their applications, at the same time, our HR is also looking by themselves and headhunting.
Yes. Now, that is, according to me, a super important part about recruiting, and which is what I specialize in as well, which is called sourcing. When you post a role, you're not always going to get exactly that person that you're looking for to apply for your role. That's like 1 in 1,000. What are the odds that you're hiring for a role and that person that you're looking for has somehow found that role and applied to it? That's not possible.
And moreover, that person might be totally happy in his current state of work.
Exactly,
and
not
may
looking
not want
out.
To apply.
Exactly. And this is where the whole concept of outbound sourcing comes into the picture, which is basically where we use LinkedIn, tools like LinkedIn, Indeed, and basically other tools. Like I'm talking LinkedIn mainly because LinkedIn is the most extensive tool out there. If you think about it and what recruiters use on a daily basis, they have a lot of versions of like LinkedIn Recruiter, LinkedIn Premium, LinkedIn Analytics, where you can actually get into it and find the right kind of talent. Now, inbound sourcing is what I spoke about in the beginning, where a role is open and the candidate actively applies to it. Outbound sourcing is when you are going and finding a candidate that you think will fit the role. Now, you're more likely to find this person making the cut when it comes to, rolling out an offer to the role, because you know that they check all the boxes. They're going to make it. You're reaching out to them because you know they're a good fit. Now, we use a lot of things like Boolean searches, which is your and or not functions. LinkedIn itself has a lot of filters where you actually go out there and search in the job market and reach out to passive candidates and ask them if they might be interested in the role. So that is basically what outbound recruiting is. Technically, it's termed as sourcing, which is basically the recruiting term that we use, where you actually go and find and source that candidate. And then you reach out to them, you get them interested. Of course, your rates are very low. You won't really get, if you email, like, say, sometimes I email 50 people, I might hear back from 1 or 2. But it's about you knowing that ratio, increasing the sourcing accordingly, and getting those.
Just to add to that,
Yeah.
when you do send those emails, how long do they have in responding back to you? If they respond, let's say 6 days later,
It's okay. It's fine. It's okay.
Okay.
Yeah, it's okay if they
It's
respond
okay.
6 days later, because I'm not likely to close that role in 6 days. It's going to take me more time. I might probably have some people in play, but they could be my backup candidates. So I'm open to it, even if they respond to me 6 days later. But maybe more than that, I've seen people respond like 3 months later, because when I reached out, they were not open to a role. And then later they come back to me and saying, hey, Arunima, is this still open? No, we've closed out on the role. But then now it's about me being a good recruiter to figure out where else can I put them in. Is there something else that I know that is a possibility that they might be a good fit for? So it's about making sure that...
That boils down to, again, how personally you are. All the HRs may not do that.
Yeah, true. I do that personally because I feel like at the end of the day, when you are getting someone an offer, or when you are making someone join your company, you as a recruiter, I personally think you have the right to change their world. Like, in terms of
Their life,
their life, for sure. I've had so many cases, and I've had so many cases in the past where they've been making, say, very, very low salaries, and the beginning of my range at Uber was very high, and I was able to just give them a really good base pay, and they were so happy, they were so elated. It just makes me feel like I've done something good in the world. So personally, I feel like you have that liberty to do that, but it's about how you go about it. But coming back to our question, yes, even if they reply to me 6 days later, I'm more than happy to speak to them, take them ahead. And because every time you have a couple of candidates in pipeline, that doesn't mean everyone's going to make the cut. They might get rejected during the interview process. They might get the offer, get rejected. They might have competing offers and not pick yours. So it's always good to, speak to that second person that's responded to you and build up that pipeline. As a recruiter, we don't have 1 or 2 people in play. We might have 6 to 10 people in play, knowing that one might make the cut.
Right. And since you spoke about that, using that example that some people were making very less, and now the starting salary of this position is way higher, the one you're offering. Let's say the person's gone through the entire process and then it comes to that final round of negotiation. Is a person supposed to speak from the last salary they've been drawing out, or is it based on what the current role they're applying for deserves to get? Which one's more likely to happen? I know it's not set in stone. Which one's more likely?
Yeah, very interesting question. But at least what we do in the market right now is the salary that they've been drawing in the past, to make sure that we give them something better than that. Now, this is also to make sure that, so compensation is a whole different ballgame altogether.
Yeah, I know.
I'll probably touch upon a little bit so that you have an idea. But every time we roll out an offer to a candidate, as a recruiter, I have 3 things to play with. When my compensation band is put in place, there is a minimum, there is a mid, and there is a maximum. Now, when you ask me the question, does the past matter or does the future matter? Future is what I have in my hand already. I already know how much they can possibly make. But the past is something is, it's good for me to know how much can I give them to close this offer, or to make them happy, or to make sure that they're just getting what is right for them from a role standpoint. Now, these compensation bands are not just put together randomly. Compensation bands are basically something that's taken into consideration, putting a lot of factors into play. Number 1 is market mapping, which is basically third-party organizations that you get in touch with, which map out how much are other similarly competitive companies paying for similar roles. And then they come to you with a particular range, saying that if you give them in between, this is an optimal range for you to give. There is also internal parity that we take into consideration, which is people that are currently in your organization or in that particular team that you're hiring for, how much are they making? Because you can't bring somebody externally on board who's making 30% of what someone who's already experienced on the team is making for the past, few years. So internal parity is something that we really put at a very high regard. So based on this is what compensation is decided. It's not just decided that if a candidate's asking you so much, you don't have the liberty to give them so much, because sometimes your range does not permit you to. And this is where, as a recruiter, I pretty much clear out compensation in my very initial discussion, which is a phone screen that I do with them, where I speak to them, I ask them how much they're making right now. Some are open to share, some are not open to share. If they're not open to share, that just gets trickier and then you have to wait till the process ends. If they're sharing it, then I pretty much know that, okay, cool. If they come on board, I can give them a so-and-so percent hike. And if they already upfront tell me that they're making something that is close to the maximum of our range, I'm going to be very upfront with them and tell them that, listen, you're already at the max of our range. We won't be able to do a lot, but we'll try and give you the best possible offer from our end. So I'll kind of like see, at the end of the day, offer does not have only a base component. In big tech companies, you have your stocks, you have your bonuses. So you kind of try and, make a good, compelling, competitive total offer rather than just the base. So yeah, that compensation is a tricky aspect, but there have been cases like we discussed in the beginning where someone who's coming in from a very below average company, but they've done great in the interviews. They've made their cut. They've met the bar. And they're just going to get what is the range that we have here, which is way more than what they've been making in the past. So cases.
So that's a possibility. People can get that.
It is a possibility. I've seen it. I've done it. I've rolled out offers. I've seen people elated. So for sure, that's a possibility. But then, I mean, there are also competitive, tricky offers where they're already making something high and then it gets tricky for you to, close it. But you try your best to do what you can. If they're actually worth it, like you try your best to close the offer on.
Okay, now I don't want to dig any further into the compensation part. I know that's going to take us way out of the discussion we're having. So coming back to the inbound sourcing and outbound sourcing. Now, just to clarify again, the outbound sources are the ones the recruiter is looking for.
Correct.
Right? And the inbound sources are the applicants who have sent their applications, resumes. Now, I just want to make a comparison here. We have the applications from the outbound sourcing, the inbound sourcing, and now comes the internal job referrals. People inside your organization have been referring to a couple of these, sending you applications of their friends or colleagues from outside.
Yeah.
Would any of these three hold a higher probability of getting selected?
Internal referrals for sure hold a very high bar.
More than the outbound and inbound sources?
More than inbound for sure, but I wouldn't say as like a significantly higher chance than an outbound, but definitely, I mean, if I'd have to rank it, I'd say inbound, outbound, and then referrals for sure.
Perfect. That's what I was looking for.
Yeah,
Okay,
from a personal standpoint, and I'll tell you why. Internal referrals are coming in. See, number one, an outbound candidate is a passive candidate. I'm trying to get them interested in the role. I'm trying to get them to interview. I'm trying to they might just not be, they might be like, yeah, well, I'll talk to you all. I'll talk to the team, see what it's like. But an internal referral is someone that is interested, that is referred by someone who's already in the organization, which means that they're coming from, they might know them a couple of ways. They're alumni, they're past alumni, which means that they're coming from a college that we've already hired from in the past. They are maybe a ex-colleague. That means they're coming from a company that we've already hired from in the past. And this just gives it higher advantages to know that. Plus, the referral kind of will know what the bar of the company is, what the culture of the company is, what our interview process looks like, because they've been through it already. I mean, the employee that's referred this person. So that also gives the candidate, that is the internal referral that's being referred, more chance to crack the interviews because they're going to be better prepared. Because this person that's referring them is also going to get a referral bonus, by the way, which is a significant amount of money, which also makes them make sure that, I mean, of course, no one's going to know the interview questions, but you can do your best to prep the candidate, to make sure that they are well prepped for the interview to make the cut. So these are certain things that stand out in internal referrals because they're already coming from a very, credible source, and they might just make the cut easier than the rest.
And one other big thing I think companies are really kind of concerned about is the culture fit. So if a person who is in the organization is referring someone, they might be culturally fit. That's one big aspect.
Almost always,
part of recruiting.
Yes. Cultural fitment is a big thing. We have a final round that takes place in most big tech companies is a culture fitment round. We call a bar raiser. So yeah, for sure. Culture fitment is a huge thing.
Okay. Now let's take it a step forward. Now we have all these applications. You've interviewed a bunch of them. After it, you move on to the HR round. The HR round is where people like us think that we've almost made it. We're just close to the finish line because the interviewing is done. I'm suitable. I probably almost got the job. Now the final negotiation that's happening with the HR. At this point, do you have like multiple candidates coming in? Do you have the HR round with like 4 or 5 or more people for one particular role? Is that a possibility, or only one final person gets to that cut?
No, I'm more than one. And as a recruiter, I would be wanting to have more than one there because we've seen that not everyone that you roll out an offer to accepts it. everyone, when they're out in the job market, are actively out in the job market, which means they're interviewing with multiple companies. They're holding multiple offers. They're using those offers to negotiate. So I think most smart recruiters would not just have one final person in the end of the process. It is good to have a couple of backups. That does not mean that I would roll out offers to multiple people. That means that I will roll out the offer to the best possible person. I will keep the other people warm and, as backups. That does not mean that I wouldn't call them backups, meaning that they're just going to be brought in the picture otherwise, but they've made the cut. Like, they've done everything that it takes. But this person stood out when it came to a couple of interview feedbacks.
When the best one doesn't join, you have others in pipeline.
We have
you
others
don't just
in pipeline.
Start the whole recruiting process
but
all
that
over
doesn't make
again.
sense, right? That's so much of that's a waste of time if you think about it. So we always have backup.
Time, cost, expenditure. Yeah.
Exactly. So we roll out the offer, we give them time, they accept, they decline. If they accept, we close out the search. If they decline, then we go back to one of the candidates who's the closest, the next closest, and so on and so forth. Now, if all of that chunk of people decline, then you restart the search, which takes you a lot more time. But yeah, we do have...
Which is what a lot of companies are facing now because of, that's again another discussion, the Gen Z and the millennials, where people who've accepted the offer letter don't show up on the first day.
Correct.
And then the HR has to start the whole process of recruiting all over again. That takes months.
That's very unprofessional, Like, I completely understand people declining offers. You are picking your next career move, which you're going to stick to for the next few years. It totally makes sense that you are the decision maker and you make your most well-informed decision. There are times after I roll out an offer, they accept the offer, they come back to me after 20 days and they tell me, Arunima, I'm not joining. And of course, I can't react in any way, but say, okay, all right, I understand, and start the search again. Doing that is still better than not turning up on your joining.
Not showing up.
Or
you don't even have any information
before your joining date, because everything's set in place. Your onboarding, we've put a whole thing aside for you, and then you don't turn up. That actually doesn't really work well, even from a candidate point of view. You're kind of flagged when you do something like that.
Well, you're flagged for that particular organization. However, it doesn't reflect on the candidate's resume.
That's true.
How many he's or she's not shown up.
It's tough to do that. I wish LinkedIn was a global tool where you could add something like that and all recruiters could see it, but unfortunately we don't know.
Okay. Yeah, I regret. So now coming back to the negotiation of the HR and the HR round. Let's say you have a couple of people and there are 2, 3. Would you decide and say all the 3 are perfectly eligible, equally capable, and they check all the big eligibility criteria? Now, would you select somebody who's cheaper, who has quoted a lesser salary compared to the other 2 who might have quoted something that's well within your range but still higher than the other one?
No, doesn't matter. I think when it comes to this, we will of course hold skill set and what they're bringing to the table at a higher regard than compensation. It does not matter if they're making less money, but if there's someone else who's done excellent at his interviews, who's ticking all the boxes, even if he's expensive, which means, in the range, but expensive, we wouldn't go for the cheaper one just because he's cheap. No, not at all. Never, actually. And that's the thing, right? As a recruiter, when you have a range to play with, you basically know that, okay, if I'm able to offer this person, I want to... And I think pretty much if you think about it, that's our job. It's bringing in the right talent, but the best talent as well. So saving a couple of $100 to the company doesn't make too much of a difference versus getting in someone that can actually make a change and make that much more money for the company. So
absolutely right. And I'll tell you why I asked you this question, because there's so many people out there, freshers and even people, including me, who are so afraid to sort of quote a certain amount, thinking that what if I get rejected? That is a general way of thinking amongst all the youngsters, at least people with up to 5, 6, 7 years of experience who haven't spoken to a lot of people out there. And so because they're afraid that they might get rejected, they quote much less than what they think they truly deserve, even if they're actually deserving.
Yeah.
So
no, I don't think...
with that, I
don't think you should ever settle for less. I think if you feel like you have the skills, or even if you don't, and you've gone there, you've gone in the market, you've learned what it takes, and you're applying for a role, it should also be a company that deserves to have you and that deserves to, bring you in for the value that you have or for the skill sets that you bring in. So for sure, never settle for less.
Okay. And now I have another scenario. Say a person asks for an X amount, and you talk to the person, what, X is not possible, a little less, say a couple of lakhs less, and then you both shake hands on it and it's agreed upon. Not yet signed the offer letter, but it's agreed upon.
Okay.
Is it a possibility that later the HR is able to get him that desired offer that he had originally asked for? Is there a possibility?
Like the higher offer that he's asked for?
Yes, which was previously outside your range, but now let's say, you've consulted with a manager. I don't know what the process
Yeah,
is
yeah, yeah.
still.
Yeah.
And now they're saying that, you know what, let's give him what he wants.
So this Anubhav is called an exceptional offer. Very, very, very rare. But if
Okay.
someone's knocked it out the park, like they've done so well, they're like, we have yeses and strong yeses in our interview, which is like double thumbs up. When we usually have our feedback, and they've gotten like all double thumbs up. They've done so well. Like, we need him on the team. He's gonna make a change. But he's so out of budget. He's, very, very rarely we look for exceptional offers. Now, this is where, like you said, they're above the maximum of our range. So we have to do a lot of processes. Like you said, we have to get approvals from managers, senior managers, directors, write in an email, write in why the candidate deserves to get that thing. But it is possible, but it happens in very, very rare scenarios. Like, the candidate should have done exceptionally well, and like, we need them, that sort of a...
Even the HR has to be equally willing to sort of
Yeah,
try and
yeah,
get him
it's
that.
almost always willing. Like, I think I told you, right? Like, it's very important for a recruiter to close an offer, because technically it's like, that's what we are marked against when you think about our performance. So they're never going to let it go easily. But then if you think about it, if we keep doing that for multiple candidates, if we keep giving exceptions for multiple candidates, that just ruins the whole purpose of having a compensation band, having parity. For example, this person that you're bringing on board might be making 10 lakhs more than the senior most person on the team that's been on the team for 5 years. If you think about it, that's not fair. And that is why, if that person still comes on board but does work at par and has caught up with that person, you're still going to give it an exception. So exceptions are very tricky. And also exceptions, when it comes from the recruiter, we need to build a very strong case. Like that it's, we actually put together like a document where we say why this person needs to get so and so. And, there needs to be data. And if we're actually going ahead with it, and it's not by the way, a given that if I write this email and put together this packet, I'm going to get an approval. The higher authorities might just say, it's okay, find someone else who's cheaper. But if you really make a compelling case, it is possible that you can get exceptions in very rare cases.
Wow. Okay. So even that's a So with that, I think people who might be listening to this should know that they should not be afraid to quote something they really think they deserve. That won't get them rejected.
Yeah. I mean, basically, you need to be honest. If you are making a certain amount, if you are making a certain amount, if you're expecting a certain amount, if you've not gotten a hike in so long, just be open and upfront with the recruiter, so they're well aware about where you're coming from and why you deserve this hike, so that they can make a compelling case for you. But unreasonable asks like you're currently making 20 lakhs and you're looking for a 60 lakh base pay in your next job, unreasonable. Or even like say a 35. I don't know. Like, if you've recently gotten promoted last quarter and you just got like a 20 lakh base increase, you would not expect for something like, very high. Like, that's just unreasonable. So if you're being very reasonable, if you've been making a certain amount, if you've not been gotten a promotion or a raise in a long time, you deserve to get that hike.
And you should have data to back it up.
Yes.
So
yes.
I think it all boils down to that.
Yeah, you can't just randomly say that I'm currently making 35 lakhs, so I want 60 lakhs. But you actually will be asked to show your pay slips. You will be asked to show your offer letter. So you need to know that all of that is going to come into play. You can't just forge or not be honest about it. But as long as you're honest and you're bringing the right data to the table, the recruiter is almost always going to be on your side to try and see what best they can do.
Great. I mean, I think we can continue and keep going on this particular topic. There'll be no end to what people can take away from this. But now moving on from this, from your background, I see that you worked for big companies. Right now you're working for something like a startup, but not that big a company that is still sort of taking off from the ground. Now, in terms of recruitment, just the recruitment process, how is it different? I mean, these big incumbent companies, they've already made it versus these that are not yet publicly traded, who are still startups and then are sort of figuring things out.
Yeah.
How does recruitment differ?
So big tech and big companies versus startups, essentially, if you look at the difference, Anubhav, is that big companies are very established in terms of processes, in terms of they have everything in place. If you're doing an interview process, there are going to be 4 rounds of discussion. There's going to be a bar raiser. This is the compensation range. Everything's set in stone. Versus when you look at a smaller company, everything's very flexible, which means that you can actually, apply for a role that you might not actually be a right fit for, but they might still consider you because they are looking for someone who is willing to get their hands dirty. They're looking for someone who's ready to work in that scrappy environment, because not
Even a jack of all trade, because you'll have to do
exactly.
lots of things in
Exactly.
a
So
startup.
that's something that we look for when we hire for people in the startup space, because even if you think about culture, culture is very different. Culture is, we have like cultural values and things like that that are there in big companies. We don't have that in startups. They takes a lot of time for all of that to come into place. So even when it comes to money, startups are still willing to give you the big bucks, primarily because you're taking a risk. Your startup might shut down tomorrow and ask you to leave, but your big tech,
Job security is
exactly,
a
your
big
big tech
question mark.
will give you a severance, will give you a heads up, a notice. That does not happen in a startup. So it's that risk that you have to take. And but then both have their own perks, I'd say, but the big companies are more established. So as a person, it depends on what you want to get into. If you feel like you want to be assigned to a particular role, just do the job that you're supposed to do. A big company is where you'll be more well suited as. Versus if you're really the kind that wants to hustle, that wants to, get your hands dirty, like do more than what your job takes, be busy, and like if you're a risk taker, then the startup's more of a worldview. So hiring does differ in smaller instances here and there, but yeah, that's pretty much the major differences I can think of.
So based on what you said, wouldn't it be right to conclude that people who are trying to switch their careers or get into a new job role are more likely to get selected if they apply for a startup than a big established company?
100%.
Because
100%.
it's somebody willing to sort of risk it and they might be selected. But in an already established, why would they sort of
Yeah.
compromise on their
Yeah.
selection?
Like I said, right, Anubhav, like I remember when I used to hire for the big companies, I used to make sure, I mean, it's just what you need to make sure. You need them to be from a tier one, from a tier two college, which is your, your IITs, your IIMs, your NITs. And if they're not from there, they don't make the cut. Like they need to have something that
Yeah.
exceptionally stands out. Versus a startup's not going to look at that possibly. They're going to be more, if someone's bringing in the skills, if someone's able to going all out and they've asked to build a presentation and they've just like done a great job with it, they're willing to take that risk and bring them on board. So yeah, it's definitely a more hireable field if you think about it from someone who's trying to shift fields and apply and stuff, because the big companies have processes in place. They will have a job description, you will have to match that, and only then will you be able to make it to the interviews. Versus startups a little more flexible. I'm not saying that you could be coming from an absolutely random background but make it to a startup, but yeah, they're more accepting and more flexible compared to the big companies.
Okay, now let's step away from this whole process of recruitment because you've spoken a lot about it and we can keep going, but there'll be no end. And I want to talk about something that's been on my mind for quite some time now, and that has been going on out there on all the platforms everybody can talk about. Um, what is your take on the 70-hour work week
Hmm. Uh,
or the 100-hour work week or, anything more than the 40-hour work
no,
week?
I'm
What do you think? And you can give me a personal answer and at the same time your perspective as an editor.
no, I think both of my answers will be the same, primarily because, and I think it's a very valid reason that I'm not saying that it makes sense, but I am not in support, and I'll tell you why. From a personal standpoint or from a recruiting standpoint, I don't think that anyone would be successful working a 70-hour week, primarily because they will be burnt out. They are not going to be as productive. I don't think that induces like a great work culture as well. You would not want to join a company that has a 70-hour work week. Like that is not something that personally I would, if someone told me that, like I wouldn't join that company. I think that if I'm as an individual able to be productive for 8 or 6 hours even in a day, but I'm able to get my work done and go over and beyond doing whatever it takes in terms of my tasks, that means it's good enough. You don't need to work 70 hours to achieve what you could do in lesser than that. I mean, I'm sure you've seen stats and research around how some people, like when it comes to attention span, there's only so much attention span that individuals have. I think pushing it beyond that wouldn't really help get anything more out of that individual rather than just burnout and stress and bad work-life balance, which I don't think anyone really would like to have. So,
And
not a fan.
just to add to that, if someone does end up successfully putting in 70, 80, 90, 100 hours a week for about, say, 6 months, those 6 months might be extremely profitable for the company, but then the candidate might end up quitting because of a burnout. And then the company has to go through the entire process of recruiting up another person to fill out that role, which then takes so many more months just to get him up to speed to the point where the person left it from.
Even from a personal experience, right? Like I've seen myself being extremely stressed out in my work, where I had so many things to do, so many roles to hire from, where I was really not doing my best. But if I have limited set of tasks to do, or even if I have a lot of work, but I had limited set of hours to focus and do it, I think I'd rather do a better job at that than working at it for longer. It could be different for different people. I'm not saying that you can work for 12 hours and you can, still be productive because someone works that way better. But I just think from a corporate setup, you have a family to go back to. You just can't keep working 70 hours in a week. Like, that just leaves you to do nothing else except work the entire week. And you have a lot more things you need to do in general to just stay sane in life. So
Yeah. And when you say 70 hours or 80 hours, anything more than 40, does that include just that single piece of work you're doing, or does that include upskilling? Or does that include maybe understanding other things like picking up a bit of better at communication? So nobody's really specifying that. If you're just doing one particular role for 70 hours a week and not upskilling,
you need to give time for things like that as well. And I mean, you can't just keep working for...
and over time you need to grow. So that needs to have other components added in that.
It's like me saying, why do people get paid overtime when they work overtime in jobs? I mean, if you're expecting someone to work 70 hours a week, I'm not saying that you pay them for... I mean, of course, you will have to pay them that much, but you can't expect them to do less work for, more work for less money. But it's not even that aspect of it. I still feel like, just the burnout, just the productivity, the overall work-life balance, everything goes for a toss. So,
absolutely
not a fan.
You started a bit of modeling back when you were in college.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yes.
And are you still pursuing that?
Not really anymore, because I kind of grew out of it, but I did pursue it for the longest time, for about 6-7 years, even during my career as well, just trying to balance it both out. But I must say that it also started when I was with my first company. I found an opportunity for a pageant, I'm in Hyderabad right now, which was called Miss Hyderabad. And I applied for it, which was about 3,000 odd people, made the cut to like the top 25. And then I just was not left with any other option but to go ahead with it. And not everyone was a fan. My father was not a fan. And I had to go into office and tell my boss who was my then boss at Uber, that I've made it. What do you think I should do? Like, it's okay. If you tell me no, then I won't go. I think I would not have done that had not it been for my boss back then to give me that support, my team to take over whatever else was there. But yeah, I think primarily because he said, go ahead, do it. I had to go for like 15 days where I had to take off and go for like a grooming session and then get into it. And then, in fact, I did win the pageant. I was like first runner up, which was great. So it worked out in my favor.
Just great.
Yeah.
And you were a fresher. I mean, in modeling, you were not experienced or anything like that.
No, that was my first stint. And I think that's when I started getting into it and started doing it on the side. Of course, Monday to Friday was working hours. So Saturdays, Sundays I do. Life got exhausting with that and that's why I stopped doing it lately, because I'm working hard Monday to Friday and then you're trying to do something that you're passionate about on the side Saturday, Sunday, and then you're just completely exhausted. But yeah, it was fun while it lasted. I completely enjoyed it. It's a very different thing versus what I do right now as a full-time job. But I also realized that it's not something sustainable, over the years. Like, I can't do it when I'm really old.
Doesn't resonate much with you in the longer run.
No, not at all. I think I did it as a hobby. I met some great people, very different people. It's a very creative field as well. And I think I enjoyed it for a bit. And I did it for a good 7 years. I think I sometimes still do it when I find, random opportunities here and there that are really good and that stand out. But I was just doing out of pure passion and pure, just something. It's always good to have something that you do on the side that's, not your main work.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So it was more like a side gig for you.
It was a side gig, yes.
And coming to that, what do you think of side gigs or side hustles, or, the common term now being moonlighting? From the perspective of an HR, what is your opinion on moonlighting or side hustles or side gigs?
See, if you are doing something that does not overlap during your work hours or does not, come in between your work, I think personally it's okay for you to do. For example, if I want to pursue horse riding or even something else where I'm teaching dance lessons and I'm, doing something in the evening where I'm doing something that I'm passionate about that I wouldn't do otherwise in a working setup, I think personally it's okay for you to do as long as it doesn't intervene with your work. That's the only call.
And I'm not just referring to a hobby. It's like a side income for you.
Yeah,
that's
what I'm saying. Like, for example, if I'm teaching... say dance, I might probably have like kids coming home. I'm just giving you an example. And like I'm teaching them classical music or dance or I'm doing modeling on the side, whatever it is. It could be anything. But But again, like I also personally, I was very grounded to the fact that I knew I had a job, but I knew that I could only take this up on Saturdays, Sundays, which is when I'm off. But it was not really coming in the way, so I was okay with doing it. If you ask me, I think it'd be okay. I'm sure that some people might differ in terms of opinion when it comes to this, but personally, something that is not intervening with your work and you're able to do something that you're passionate about on the side should be something that's okay with.
Right. That sounds reasonable. Because I know that these days companies are trying to have a say and whether the employees should be involved in moonlighting or side hustle, side gigs. Do you think companies should have a say?
See, it's very
Um,
difficult when if someone is doing something on the side, which is like working a sales job while doing this on the side for another company, that technically means I think legally that could be a problem, right? You're technically working
uh,
two jobs, and I'm sure that will be a legal constraint and depends on your offer letter, what you've signed, as long as if you're a freelancer thing.
Especially if you're like in a product company and there are
Exactly.
two
Yeah, that's
competing
it gets
products.
tricky then. But if you're doing something which you're a freelancer and you can take up multiple gigs, right? It doesn't really matter. Even if you're tied down to working 10 hours with a particular company, if you want to really work hard and take up something else on the side and work late night, that's up to you. But yeah, I don't think that you should ideally do something in the same field as yours. That might just complicate things a little bit. If you probably
Yeah.
diversify into something that you're a little more passionate about or that you like or that you want to learn or you want to, I don't know, tutor people on the side, in degrees that you've already learned. Like stuff like that, I think is still fine, where you can make some pocket money on the side versus doing two full-time jobs, which might be tricky.
Which might be absolutely. Now, and coming back to the modeling gig now, do you think modeling as a side gig for, the girls and guys of today, the youngsters who are just starting off, graduating now, do you think that's a suitable profession? Not as a full time, but we're just talking about as modeling as a side
Oh,
gig for
yes.
what about the young girls?
Oh, yes, absolutely. I think it's I'm surprised that I'm into this, so I know enough about it to say that there is so much more to it. Like, it's not as easy as it sounds. When I do ad films, I learn scripts, I do it in different languages. There is so much more to it than just the glam. That's pretty much all people see exterior,
Yeah.
outside. But you're walking in 6-inch heels, you're getting your hair fried, your skin is taking a toll. There's so much more to it than it. Is it a side gig and is it a viable side gig? For sure. Like, I think it's something that, especially if someone's looking to get into the acting, the creative field, or they just want to do it for the money on the side, like, it's definitely something that you can pursue. And that's why I'm saying that it's not easy, but it's definitely something that if you're interested in, why not? Like, young people is pretty much what is out there when it comes to, at least people that I see here right now who are modeling, they are the youngsters. And you kind of don't get to do this when you're really old because, this is something where your age does matter. So, and there's also like fresh faces, designers don't want to work with the same old faces again and again. So they do look out for fresh faces. So I think there's definitely a space there for these young people to come in and take over and, definitely get into the market of modeling for sure.
Right. Now, so when we have these jobs, IT jobs or private sector jobs, very clearly we have them posted on, these job portals. But where do you get these modeling gigs? How do people who have no idea where to begin, where do they start?
So essentially, if you're trying to get a head start in the modeling space, you need to do it. You can do it through different methods. For example, how I did it is I joined a beauty pageant. But a beauty pageant is not just about how you look, but about also how you talk or you answer the questions. Because if you,
Carry yourself,
yeah,
your
exactly, it's
personality.
your personality. Because if you see, all of the Miss India, Miss Universe, you are asked questions and it's about how you answer them. But it's not just about your face value and the walk and etc. Versus if you're trying to do modeling, what you need to put together is like in your corporate world, you have a resume. In the modeling world, you have a portfolio. Very similar to how design folks have a portfolio, but a portfolio is the work or the pictures that you've done. So if you're really starting off and you have no idea, then you, of course, are going to do things for free where you find a very good photographer, you come up with a theme, you get a couple of pictures clicked, you put together a portfolio. It could be on Tumblr, it could be anywhere online. There are a lot of websites that help you do it. Go ahead, put your pictures together, put together a portfolio, send it to a couple of designers. I mean, I think at the end of the day, it's like when you're trying to land a new jobs, you might just reach out to a lot of people and you have to do pretty much the same thing. Be a little out there, make a good portfolio, send it to designers out there, send it to casting agencies out there, join a casting agencies. Casting agencies are, again, a very good place for you to start when you do not have contacts because they have contacts and they can just put you into roles. And that's, a great place to start at as well. But if you don't want to, casting agencies often tend to take a cut in the fee that you make. And if you don't want to do that, you basically just do it out there on your own. Yeah, so where you just reach out to people and Instagram mainly. I think that's where all of this happens because you're designers are out there, your, if you're doing ramp shows, your choreographers are out there. So reach out to them, tell them that you're new in the market, you're looking for something open, and also build your profile on your own. I think like a lot of things that came to me in the beginning came through my Instagram, because I was posting content regularly with my modeling gigs and the whatever I've been doing. And, just people need to reference that to see if you will be able to do a good job with what they're looking for. So yeah, essentially that. And also make.
Do you have to be a certain type? Do you have to be a certain type to get into modeling, like this particular height or this particular weight range, or people outside those ranges can also apply?
I mean, things are getting very better. Like right now, I see so many people looking for plus size models on my WhatsApp stories where they're like, do you know anyone? Do you know anyone?
Okay,
And
specifically for plus size models.
yeah, specifically,
Wow.
but also
Okay.
for normal models. Like there's that. And there's also, if they're looking for a brand that's actually looking to shooting with a plus size model, they do that. To shoot with someone who's okay with shooting body positivity. So it could be someone who has acne, because usually the normal people do not want to shoot with them. But now things are completely, I think, taking a U-turn.
Wow.
When it comes to,
It's indeed the creative field, which
yeah,
means
for sure. Which is, it's very nice to see. I think I've seen so many people, so many designers shooting with not making sure that skin color is a problem, not making sure that weight is a problem. Only thing I think where height comes into picture is a ramp, which is basically your fashion shows and stuff like that,
okay.
which they do. I still see that things have not changed there, where they do feel that you need to have a particular, 5'7" and above for you to be able to apply to that pageant, make it for a show, or even just be eligible for it. So yeah, that is one aspect where things have not changed. But shoots and ads, and I'm sure you've seen so many ads over time that have completely been very different from the typical ones that we've seen in the past.
Now, you worked in the modeling side, you have a taste of it, and you are full-time working in the IT sector as well. How do the nature of work differ in both of these fields?
Interesting question. I think this is more regular, meaning that it's all, I know what to do. I know that I come into work, I have a role to hire for, I go on to LinkedIn, I source those candidates, I reach out to them. I know what to do.
8 hours a day,
Yes,
8 hours a
8 hours
day.
a day. Whereas over here in the modeling space, I don't know what to expect when I'm working in. I don't know who I'm going to work with, who I'm going to meet, what my script looks like, what am I going to be asked to do? Am I going to be shooting amidst a forest? Am I going to be shooting in an indoor space? It's a very different, because at the end of the day, a creative field has a lot of freedom to it. Like you never know, like things might just change upfront. There have been times where you just put in your own creative freedom to it and you change things around. So nothing's really set in stone. So I don't know what to expect, actually. Every time I go into a shoot, I don't know what the day is going to look like. So there's definitely
And how
that.
long you're going to be there?
Yeah,
Also that.
how long I'm going to be there. But usually I think when you sign contracts, you have like, yeah, that used to be a problem back in the day. But like I've also done shoots for like 3 hours, shorter ones. But your normal corporate working hours are, I can't finish my day in 3 hours. Like I have so much more work to finish. So yeah, it differs in that aspect. But otherwise, it's typical. A lot of things that overlap as well. Your professionalism, being on time. There's a lot that still overlaps, but your
The other thing I feel that, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think what a big difference would be, personal contacts matter in that part of the world
oh
a
yes,
lot more
100%.
than this part of the world.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, even if I know someone and I'm a manager, doesn't mean I can just recruit that person
Yeah,
straight away.
because here, I think in the corporate world, you have performance reviews and things like that to, put you on the pedestal, to get you up in the ladder. But if you want to really be out there, land more gigs in the modeling field, you need to have contacts for sure. I think you need to,
Yeah.
you can't just be an introvert, just sit around and expect things to come to you. You need to go out there and ask for it. I think that's something I've realized. You need to
Yeah.
message
Okay.
people, tell them that, I'm available, I'm free end of this month. Like, let me know if there's something. I'm more than happy to come, work on a shoot and stuff like that. Also, like, you need to work from your end to get work. Over here, you're going to be getting work because, and it's inconsistent. Like, during COVID, the whole modeling scene took a complete backseat because people were not
Absolutely.
getting paid. I still remember a couple of shoots that I did during COVID. I had to do my own hair and makeup and go, which was not the case normally. You have someone who does your hair and makeup. So things have completely
Oh,
changed
okay.
after that. But during COVID, jobs were still, as much as, of course, there were layoffs and stuff, like, thankfully, a lot of people still had the jobs that they had. But the modeling
Yeah.
field had completely gone to a standstill. So, it's that security of job as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. Now we come to the final segment wherein we need to talk about the elephant in the room, which everybody is wondering about. And we've already touched upon this a little bit in the beginning of the discussion, although I didn't want to. I wanted to be kept aside just for this last part. But how different do you think the job of a recruiter, or the whole process of recruitment or the job of an HR is going to change with the onset of AI, artificial intelligence?
I feel like it's already here, Anubhav. Like I feel like we're already in a space where AI is slowly starting to, I wouldn't say take over. Right now, it's in a place where it's actually helping us. And I like to be honest about that. A lot of stuff and tools that we use, AI started coming into the picture. Just like how you have Chat GPT, there is People GPT, which is actually a people-centric tool that we use to source candidates. I actively use it right now, but I basically just type in whatever I need and it gives me a list of candidates that are most suitable for the role. It makes my life so much more easier. And it could be,
Wow.
when you're finding that purple unicorn, like it could be typing that out and it might just help you find that as well. Has this taken over my job? Not yet, because I still need to have that human touch to pick up the phone, talk to the candidate. But then I keep debating with my colleagues if it's possible that, at one point it can also just pick up the phone and talk to the candidate. But I always still feel like that human touch, that back and forth, I feel like they won't be able to nail that anytime soon. But right now, AI in the recruiting space is being more helpful than not. Even in LinkedIn, every single update that comes with LinkedIn, which is pretty much what we're on all day. I've seen, for example, a passive candidate that I'm reaching out to. Number one, like People GPT, LinkedIn also has that feature where I can just type in and it can pull out a list of, candidates that are suitable for my role, which is great. If I'm trying to reach out to them, what we usually do is we build together a messaging where we tell them that, hey, we're from so-and-so, we're reaching out for this. And we craft a really nice messaging for which we actually have a team to do that, like a back-end operations team. But now if I just go on LinkedIn and click on the candidate's profile on the message button, it already automatically drafts an email for me and tells me very
Right.
personalized, I must say. Like I would totally send that, but yeah, it's
No grammatical errors with perfect language
and so
uh,
personalized, right? It's not like I've sent that to 100 people.
personalized. Yes.
Yeah, it literally picks out what company you're working at, and then it says that your experience with so-and-so company has been great, and the work that you've done and so-and-so. So this is basically words that you mentioned in your profile that it's picked out, crafted that message. So yeah, it's already doing a great job with just helping out with making life easy for us for now. I don't know where it's going to be headed in the long run. I don't know if they're going to take over. I still feel like as a recruiter that human touch that we have is really important. I don't expect an AI to close offers, to do negotiation, go back and forth. It's possible, but yeah, it's still there's still a lot more that needs to be done for AI to take over recruitment.
Currently, I think what's going on is leveraging AI to sort of perform
Exactly.
or do better at your own job.
Exactly.
Everything changes all overnight. That might never happen.
Yeah.
But things might happen in phases.
Yeah.
And I have yeah, please
Yeah,
continue.
sorry.
You were
For
saying?
example, I told you about me being a recruiting coordinator back in the day where I was scheduling interviews and helping set it up on calendars. All of that is
Yeah.
automated right now. We have Calendly. I'm sure you've used Calendly. There are automated
Yes.
scheduling tools which do that. I don't need to sit and ask the candidate, what time are you available? And, pick a slot that works in the hiring manager's calendar. Click of a button, it's done without me being the middleman. So things like that are being taken over. But I feel like so far, whatever has been happening in terms of changes that I addressed is for the better. It's just making things more tech savvy and less manual in the right way. But I don't I see it going this way. I hope it doesn't take over in a way that actually doesn't benefit us when it comes to hiring the right candidates.
Perfect. But let's take it a step forward. And in a world which is not arrived yet, um, what do you think currently is the extent of AI in your job? Like, I know that it won't take away all your jobs overnight. That will never happen. But do you see the headcount going down? Let's say a company needs, I'm just giving a number,
Yeah.
50 recruiters or HRs at
Yeah.
one, but now you need just 5
Yeah, for
because
sure, for sure.
all the other manual pieces of work are being done by
Exactly.
AI.
Like I think at a point you'd only need your upper management, your recruiters, the ones that actually genuinely provide that human touch and speak to the candidates. The ones that are behind the system, I think that might just slowly phase out. And I'm speaking about this just from purely personal perspective. Both of the initial jobs that I started doing 9 years back, I feel like they're all done by tools and tech and AI right now. I don't
Yeah.
think
Yeah.
screening of
You've
candidates.
seen that change yourself
Yeah,
throughout
I
these
see the
9
change
years.
myself. And I mean, I must say that I'm not upset about it. It's so far so good. I wouldn't say that but again, right, Anubhav, it brings me back to the point where you told me that, okay, when you were reviewing resumes, you would still give that person a little bit of a chance. That chance is not going to be given anymore. That chance is going to be out of the window in simple terms, but that's just unfortunate. Like these few things, I feel like sometimes we need to settle for something big. You need to settle for giving up on a couple of things. But otherwise, I think the role of an inbound candidate source or recruiting coordinator, you have automated scheduling tools, a lot of back-end roles that ops-driven, the smaller things that needed to be done are all being done now by AI. So yeah, I still feel like the lower management, smaller roles might be slowly phased out and is already getting phased out. But the bigger ones where you actually need to manage your stakeholders, where you need to talk to the candidates, negotiate that offer. Maybe your data analysis, market analysis can still be done by AI. But yeah, there are those few roles that will still need you to have like a human touch to it.
Right, absolutely. But what would be your advice to someone, even like you, or someone who's starting up now, or say in the coming years, to prepare for this uncertain future? And I'm talking just purely for HRs and recruiters.
I think
Do you have any ideas in mind? How would you prepare better for this uncertain future?
I think just upskilling for sure. I mean, you shouldn't really be tied down to one single role. You shouldn't really see, for example, personally, if you talk to me, I absolutely love the creative field of designing. And, I would love to just learn that and pick that up and go. And for some reason, if, recruiting is completely taken over, I might just shift to that. But to have like a backup of sorts to make sure that you are not just doing the same thing that you're doing for the next 10 years, but you're actually learning something more, learning something new, learning a better tool, learning, something that you feel like will stick for the next few years. And I think this is where also the question comes up about having a side gig or having something that you do on the side, which can always be something that you can shift to. For example, if something happens, worst case, I just decide to be like a yoga instructor because I did like a teacher's training course in yoga. I always know that can't be taken over by AI. You need someone to be there to teach you, to push that bone that you need to be pushed. Like these are things that can't really be, taken over anytime soon. So yeah, I think
Unless the robotics in Japan takes a
exactly. I
whole
did think
different
about that at the back of my
type.
head, but that's going to take some more time. So I think if you need to make sure that you have options, you have backups, you have things that you want to do apart from what you're doing already, and think about things that AI might not take over. Actually, like I don't know if there is a lot out there, but I'm sure there is something or the other. So
Or maybe just using or leveraging AI to do your own job
exactly.
better and more
I
efficiently, I
think
think.
that's the
Efficiency
best
is
way
going
to
to
go
go up.
about it, and that's what's happening right now. And if it keeps going the same way, then nothing like it.
I think perfect. That would be a great note to sort of end this conversation. It was amazing talking to you. I'm thinking it's going to be really enlightening for the listeners,
I hope so
for
too.
people who have no idea what happens behind the curtains in terms of recruiting. And I hope to talk to you later again on some other topic because we already touched upon a couple of those, like compensation, which is a whole new discussion.
Yeah,
Modeling, in fact, it can be a completely different episode
for
here.
sure.
So it was great talking, and see you next time then.
Same here. Thank you
Thank
so
you,
much for having
Arunima.
me on board. Bye.
Great. Bye.